Well, I've heard a lot about people talking about, or sharing videos or sharing posts or on Facebook regarding money in politics, and it's funny how people believe that if you take money out of politics, all of a sudden the politicians will realize that they worked for you rather than the money, and for the millionaires and billionaires. Well, the funny thing is, even if you took away the whole entire concept of a monetary system or the idea of currency, you would still have people in power, regardless. And that's what's wrong with society is there are people on a pedestal that are the almighty power when it comes to decision making. So if a person's above you in the power grid, they're going to attempt to control you any way they can. And you can take money away, you can take the money system away, you can take the idea of a currency away, and they would still be in power, and they still would be corrupt. Money doesn't corrupt, power does. I mean, if money was an all-consuming corruption, why don't you consider any person that's considered rich, a billionaire, a millionaire? I mean, I don't care if it's LeBron James, Oprah, Ted Turner, Bill Gates, whoever. I mean, anybody you can mention, throw a dart, dart at a board. You can just put 1,000 pictures up of celebrities and millionaires and entrepreneurs that are 100 times richer than you, 1,000 times richer than you, and you throw a dart at any of those pictures and hit a name. It could be any name. It could be Bono from U2. It could be Jay-Z. It could be anybody. It could be Puff Daddy, whatever. Anybody who's worth 500 million. Anybody who's worth $2.3 billion. Anybody who's worth $3.4 billion. Whatever the figure is. As long as it's $1 million or more. Just throw it out there. Would you consider anybody who has more money than you evil? And if you do, why? Which is not true, because everybody loves sports stars. Everybody loves their favorite rockers, their favorite rappers, their favorite TV show host. Everybody has a favorite. Whether they understand or know or care if that person's rich. So you have your favorite celebrities, you have your favorite figureheads, if you will. So in essence, you're talking about people and how money controls everything, and how money controls politics, and how money controls power, the power struggle, and how money makes people forget about what's right in this world, and what's righteous and what's unrighteous, and what's justice and what's just. Excuse me. So some people believe that money makes evil. The more the money, the more the evil. So it all ties into that Rothschild, Rockefeller camp. The whole entire the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds, they own the world. They secretly control the governments of the world. Well, there's a problem with that theory, and there's a problem with that statement. First of all, if money controls government, why have government? Because as we know it, the fiat currency known as the U.S. dollar and any other dollar or any other type of currency system owned and operated and printed by the government is fiat currency. So a lot of times that currency isn't backed up by real palatable resources. It's not backed up by gold or anything, which is funny because people attack digital currency as being worthless or trivial or not real. But the thing is, it's no different. If you're going to talk about fiat currency, why don't you talk about the fiat currency that the government controls? The government controls or attempts to control the idea of currency because they know that if they can't control the currency, anybody can make up a currency, and people might catch on and say, let's circulate this currency, whether it's a paper currency or a digital currency, and the more this currency is circulated, it could potentially ruin the government's control of the monetary system. And then people believe that the Federal Reserve is a complete private institution, and central banking's private institutions, but not really. Would you consider the Postal Service a private business, private corporation? No, because guess what? Government protections. It's inherently entwined in the federal government because it's a federally protected system, just like the Federal Reserve. Why the fuck would it be called a Federal Reserve if it's completely private? Excuse my blunt language there, but fuck it. You're going to sit there and say something's private, even though it has perfect federal protections on it. Just like the Postal Service. The United States Postal Service is not a private institution because it is completely protected by the federal government. If you punch a mailman in the face, you just committed a federal offense because he is technically a federal employee. Just because he doesn't work for the FBI or the CIA, or just because he's not, part of the, physical federal government, he's not a politician or whatever, he's not, a senator or a president, doesn't mean whatever, it doesn't mean he's not a federal employee or a federal entity. The United States Postal Service is federal, just like the Federal Reserve is federal. The basic backbone of the central banking system in the United States is federal because it's federally protected. Nobody understands this. It's not a private institution. So what are you talking about central bankers? If you killed all the central bankers, you would still have the federal government, and you would still have a power struggle, and you would still have a totalitarian government that controls you. Because you're looking at the wrong picture. You think that a man has money, he's evil. But only if he's part of the political system or whatever you think it is, whatever you think the political system is. Oprah's not evil, even though she's worth, I can't remember what it was. Was it one of the Rockefellers that just died? I figured out his worth, and he was actually worth less money. He had less money than Oprah. Oprah's more powerful than this guy on a technical scale. If you're considering money, if you're equating money to power, then Oprah was more powerful than this recently deceased, whatever he was, entrepreneur, central banker, whatever, financial advisor. I'm just kidding. No, so people don't understand this. They equate money with power, but yet their favorite billionaires and millionaires are always going to be protected because the guy who throws a football the best and earns $15 million a year is not evil. But a politician who makes a politician or somebody or a banker who makes $800,000 a year is somehow more evil than a sports star who makes 8 times that much, or 10 times that much, or 20 times that much. But we forget that. People forget that a CEO is busy creating wealth for himself, and then he's one of the main reasons why all of a sudden this company hired 20,000 more people, and he only took home $4.5 million last year. But some football player that throws a football or catches a football made $18 million last year. Oh wow, geez, he's more valuable than that guy who created 20,000 jobs, or who helped create 20,000 jobs. Not saying that the NFL doesn't create jobs, because obviously somebody has to build that stadium. Someone has to, do the concessions in that stadium. Someone has to maintain the stadium. People are hired to referee the contest, and there's all sorts of jobs within that, but it's not solely on the backbone of a football player. It's the commissioners, it's the owners, it's all those other, higher ups in the management system, not just the football players. So when you're saying that money is evil and we got to get rid of money, and getting rid of money means that we'll have a benevolent, benign government, it's very, very ignorant to say that. First of all, there's been plenty of countries that technically don't have a strict sense of a monetary system. I mean, communism doesn't technically have, countries with a communist regime technically don't have a monetary system. And the poorest of poor people are poor because there's not a real strict sense of a monetary system. And even if there is, I mean, the way they deal with money is different than what they do in a so-called capitalist country, or so-called democracy, or constitutional republic. Now I know communist countries do have currencies. It's not like Cuba doesn't have a currency. It's not like Soviet Russia didn't have a currency. It's not like communist China doesn't have a currency. It's just the fact that the currencies are weighted different, and there's different things behind it. Strictly speaking, usually in some of these countries, even the people who are college educated, people who have 5-year degrees, or people who have medical degrees, or people are lawyers. I mean, they make about as much money as a taxi driver. And in some of these countries like Cuba. In fact, sometimes taxi drivers in Cuba make more money than doctors. But what's funny is people value the idea that currency is evil, and somehow a person who has more currency is evil. But yet they save their favorite stars and favorite celebrities from judgment. That Oprah couldn't be evil because she's just Oprah. But somehow a person who's worth less than her because he's a central banker, because he's an entrepreneur, because he's whatever, he's in the financial system, somehow he's more evil. He contributed to the wars. He's the reason why these wars wage on. Well, the thing is, Jacob Rothschild, David Rockefeller, and all their relatives, and all these people connected to the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, the billionaires and the millionaires that you so speak of in America. They wouldn't have nowhere near the amount of power you claim they have if the government didn't exist, because the government is the entity that controls all this. So the government nets out political, and other protections to these people. So a lot of these corporations that have problems with, with keeping, maintaining a profit and maintaining, stable, a stable, what do you call it? Basically, stability. The companies have a problem with stability. Either their CEO, took the company in the wrong direction and they started losing money, and they had to lay off workers. Well, all of a sudden, because these people started losing money and laid off workers, well, what the government will do sometimes is, it's not an official bailout, but it's some kind of subsidy, and the corporations get these subsidies from the government to try to try to inject some kind of form of stability into a crumbling infrastructure. Well, the problem with that is, if it doesn't work for if it doesn't work for the people at large, if it doesn't work for if government injecting stability with subsidies doesn't work for poor people, and it doesn't work for a country with problems, it doesn't work with corporations. So, injecting outside help, injecting money into a problem isn't always the best solution, because there's no accountability there. The corporation can just continue to provide bad service, or continually just go down into a downward spiral, because that downward spiral will never be met with a bottom, because there's always going to be a cash injection. There's always going to be an injection of help and resources, just like poor people. Poor people will never get out of the sewer. Poor people will never be cured of poverty, because they're not going to do anything, because there's always a cash injection. There's always a cash injection there. And it's not, oh, well, money's evil, we need to get rid of money, because without money, everybody would be taken care of. They just have to work. Well, first of all, at what measure is there enough? At what rate is enough to survive? So, I mean, would you say that people only need to work 4 hours to be provided with enough food and water and shelter, or do you say they need to work 18 hours to provide that for themselves? Or what measurement do you use to kind of value, or what value? I mean, what system of value and what measurements do you use to determine whether or not people deserve to eat and have shelter? Well, the thing with people, they go, well, money is an evil system because poor people always hurt the worst. Well, the thing is, in a system of money and monetary currencies and all that, it doesn't matter what currency it is. It could be the U.S. dollar, it could be a Bitcoin, it could be Litecoin, it could be all the other digital currencies that you could think of, or anything. It could even be gold or silver. It could be anything. Well, the persons who have all this money, or who have a lot of this money, they end up donating a lot of it to poor people, and poor people get fed and sheltered regardless. And the thing is, the governments sometimes step in to prohibit people from donating, or prohibit people from feeding and sheltering the homeless people and the poor people. Churches get fined by local governments for housing the homeless. And then supermarkets and places like that sometimes get, churches. I mean, it's a variable there. It's always a variable. Sometimes the local government's pretty understanding. Sometimes they're not. A lot of times they're not. They arrest people for feeding the homeless. They fine people for feeding the homeless. And you can't, if the food is, a day old but still technically good, You can't feed the homeless sometimes. You have to. There's always special provisions that have to be met to be able to feed homeless people. Whatever. They're basically trying to make it. They're trying to outlaw the concept of homelessness. You can't be. It's illegal to be homeless. Is what the government. It's a war on the homeless. So obviously, the war on the homeless makes more homeless people. But people don't understand that. So they just think, oh well, if we just let the government decide what's best for us, everybody will eat. Everybody will be sheltered. Well, the problem with that is, when has government ever solved or cured poverty? They never have. They've created it. So I'd be more concerned about the government rather than some billionaire. Because without the government, the billionaire may not even exist. He may only be worth $200 million. He may only be worth $500,000 because he has to constantly compete with other people in order to either boost his own wage, or to boost his own wealth, or to maintain his wealth. He has to have he has to constantly figure out how to best the competition. You don't have to best the competition if the government backs you. There is no competition when when government protections are involved. You don't have to compete as much when government is involved. So the government is the malignant force there. It's the cancerous force behind all this. So if you want to stop the billionaires and the millionaires from being so evil, why don't you stop the government? Because the millionaires and billionaires technically may not even exist, without strict government protections. Without government protections, without government protections, people are forced to compete better. You either have to provide a better service, or you have to provide a better good. If you're not treating your customers right, customers just walk out the door and you lose money. But if you government protected, the government will just inflate you, putting subsidies under you, and saying, oh well, you don't really have to do right by the customer because we'll just save you, and then there's a circle jerk of power there. And of course people don't realize that, so they blame the billionaires. They blame what they call capitalism, when it's not even capitalism, it's cronyism, it's government protections, on why poor people exist, why poor people can't get why corporations still exist, why corporations have so much power. Well, you hate corporations so much, why do you love government? Because corporations only exist inside a government entity. Corporations are legal fiction. Corporations are only corporations with government say so. With government, you file paperwork. There's legal matter behind corporations. Corporations don't exist without government. It's just simple as that. Actually learn something about governments and corporations and how they intertwine with each other. Without government, they wouldn't exist. So get rid of government. Corporations most likely wouldn't exist. Businesses would still exist. There will be some wealthy people still around, but get rid of government, and you wouldn't have as much problem. You wouldn't have people who are trying to feed the homeless be prohibited from feeding the homeless. The people who have the means and they're willing to take care of the lesser fortunate people would do so without being punished by a shadowy entity, the government. But of course, no one understands this because they're so worried about who has what and who doesn't have what. They would rather have everybody have nothing. Everybody should have nothing because these people don't have nothing, and some other people have something, and nobody should have anything. And that's what's wrong with society, is that they're hinging more on the idea that money is evil rather than the government. That there's thousands of years worth of history that'll tell you otherwise. They'll tell you government is evil no matter how you look at it. You can take away the money. You can have no money at all. You can have no concept of a monetary system, and you'll still have evil tyrants doing whatever they want to the peasants. You'll have people dying in the streets, starving, being beaten to death by the authority. It doesn't matter. You can take the money away. You'll still have government. Government will always exist outside of money, whether or not money exists or not. Government will exist, And until people understand they don't need government, and until then, government will always exist, whether money exists or not, whether a monetary system exists or not. Government will, and people need to understand that you've got to rid yourself of authority. Be self-governing. If people govern themselves and mind their own business, it might actually help people out a lot. If you really want to help people, then you can help the people. There's nothing stopping you from helping people, and if there is, it's almost always exclusively a government agency trying to stop you. Why are you trying to provide welfare for people when the government doesn't want you to provide welfare for people, because they want an excuse to tax you, to take your money and give it to other people. Well, you can clearly do that yourself without government. You can take your own money and give it to other people if you want to help people. Government doesn't need to do it. Government just wants an excuse to steal money, and so the more money they steal, the more wars you fund, the more problems you fund, and the more problems you create. But so in reality, money is not evil. Government is.